The couple is enjoying a happy moment at the carnival celebrating their wedding anniversary, but nearby a group of thugs snap a photo of the scene and taunt Dan. Dan notices and immediately steps in, asking them to delete the picture since it's a private moment between him and his wife. Hey, that picture you just took, it was kind of a private moment, you mind deleting it? Yeah, I do. The thug refuses. As Dan approaches to confront them, the thug tauntingly uploads the photo to social media. Dan's wife tries to convince him to let it go, but secretly she wishes he would stand up for himself instead. Dan just stares at the thug, doing nothing. The next moment, even though he's been humiliated, Dan holds his ground and walks away. Back home, he washes up, but as he lets in bed, the image of the insult keeps replaying in his mind. It's not that he can't defend himself. He just doesn't want to risk losing the peaceful, happy life he has. Dan is the top salesman at a car dealership in Buffalo, New York. He's the best on his team. You're behind the wheel of a high-performance automobile like this. They know you are that guy. You have that life. He and his wife have a happy life, and today is their wedding anniversary. Even though his boss asked him to take photos for the company, he refuses and rushes home to spend the day with his wife. Happy anniversary, baby. When he gets home, he's greeted by Jessica and their 3 kids, Na, Kyle, and Max. Jessica is in the middle of a disagreement with Na about her college choice. Na had planned on going to Stanford for journalism, but now she's decided to go to Southern Iowa University with her boyfriend Trevor. Happened to journalism in Stanford. Wasn't that the dream? Journalism is dead, Dad. Is that something that Trevor said? Jessica asked Dan to talk to Na, but Na stands firm in her decision. Dan suggests taking Jessica out to celebrate their 18th wedding anniversary. He asks Kyle to babysit Max, but Kyle has other plans and refuses, pushing the responsibility onto Na, who isn't too happy about it. What? Because I'm a woman? That is not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying right now. What is wrong with you? Meanwhile, Kyle skips out on his group project to meet his friend Samir. After paying Samir some money, they hang out in Samir's garage playing online games. Kyle is known online as Killboy, a well-known gamer with a massive following famous for his skills in shooting games. Meanwhile, Dan and Jessica head to the carnival. Jessica's a little annoyed with Dan because he always sticks to his usual plans, while she hopes he'll plan a family vacation. No one makes a better week planner than you do, but I don't know. Maybe be a little bit more spontaneous. Travel and... After a few rides, Dan agrees to plan the vacation, and Jessica is excited. As they kiss, the scene from the beginning happens. On the way home, Jessica reassures Dan that she doesn't want him to confront the bullies. If I wanted to marry a brawler, I would have. Knowing how much he hates violence, but inside, she feels disappointed. Back home, he smoothly changes Max's diaper, then gets into bed and wakes Jessica up, mumbling that he should have kicked the guy's ass, which makes Jessica laugh. He totally could have taken him. The next day, Jessica practices boxing to release her frustration. As a full-time mom, she faces a lot of challenges, including dealing with Na's difficult choices. While boxing, she accidentally punches a woman named Gwen. Jessica apologizes and explains that she's frustrated because her husband never invites the family on vacation or spends time with them. I don't know, sometimes I guess I just feel like I'm a little kind of trapped. After chatting for a bit, Gwen says she has to catch a flight and gives Jessica her business card. Gwen's a travel agent and offers to help her plan a vacation. Meanwhile, Dan and Max are shopping at the grocery store when a stranger suddenly attacks him. Dan quickly defends himself, but the thug won't give up, even with Max in front. Dan skillfully takes the thug down, leaving everyone around stunned. He pretends nothing happened, pays for the groceries, and heads home. Once home, Dan opens a secret compartment filled with guns, expired passports, and piles of cash. He panics and calls his old colleague Augie to arrange new identities for his family, revealing they're in danger. Augie tells Dan that his former boss McCaffrey has been looking for him. Concerned that the photo posted online might give away his location, Dan offers $500,000 for new IDs and arranges to meet in Las Vegas in 3 days. Augie is shocked that Dan's family doesn't know his previous job. What am I meant to do, sit him downtown? The whole story of a French toast. Oh, hey kid, you know I passed some maple syrup by the way your dad was a government assassin? He urges him to tell them the truth. Otherwise, running from McCaffrey's mercenaries with a family that doesn't know what's going on will be nearly impossible. Later, Dan goes to Na's school to find her in the magazine editor's office, but she's not there. A student tells him Na quit her job 3 months ago and is now hanging out at the stadium with her friends. Dan finds Na there and tells her he's disappointed she didn't tell him she left the magazine. "Of course I do. I always do." Dan insists she come with him when he goes to pick up Kyle from school. He finds Kyle in Samir's garage playing online games. Dan scolds Kyle and tells him to get in the car. Traitor. Once all the kids are in the car, Dan drives to pick up Jessica, who's working at the hospital. He announces they're going to Las Vegas for a vacation, which is exactly what Jessica had been wanting. "Crazy, we're going to Vegas." Meanwhile, a black van starts following them. When Dan notices, he tries to shake the van by speeding up but doesn't tell his family. He drives to his work's showroom, lifts the car, and finds a tracking device underneath. Dan secretly places the device in a car his colleague is about to test. "Get on the freeway. You open her up and you get a ticket. It's on me." The people in the black van think they're still following Dan, but when things settle down, Dan continues his journey to Las Vegas with his family. Back at Dan's house, a man named McCaffrey and his 3 henchmen are trying to track down Dan's family. It isn't easy. They have no credit card records to follow, and Dan's family hasn't posted anything on social media. McCaffrey suspects Dan hasn't revealed his true identity, so he swiftly orders his men to continue the search for Dan's family. Meanwhile, during their hotel stay, Dan has a change of heart. After noticing that Kyle has posted a photo with fans on social media, Dan tells his family they need to keep moving. This means his wife and kids have to spend the night in the car. Soon enough, 3 motorcyclists working for McCaffrey begin pursuing Dan's vehicle. Dan cranks up the music to keep his family oblivious to the danger. Little Max is wide awake, giggling endlessly, almost as if he knows his dad has everything under control. Suddenly, one of McCaffrey's men tries to shoot Dan, but Dan fires back and hits him. Another guy comes up and grabs onto the car, but Dan stuffs Max's baby bottle into his helmet, knocking him out as he tumbles onto the road. Finally, Dan rams his car into the criminal's motorcycle, taking out the last pursuer. Jessica wakes up after hearing an explosion, but Dan tells her it was just a pothole. He drives all night and decides to stop at a plantation to rest. Just as he is about to drift off, Na wakes up and realizes they have arrived in Java. She asks her dad to take her to Southern Iowa University. "Are you serious? Are we going to argue about this, about you following a boy to college?" She wants to meet her boyfriend after some arguing with Jessica. Dan eventually agrees to take her to the campus. As Na walks through the campus park with Kyle and Max, Kyle mentions that the family seems uneasy about her relationship with Trevor. He admits he misses the old Na who was closer to the family. "He treats you like ... You deserve more." Touched by his words, Na smiles and thanks her brother for his concern. Meanwhile, Dan listens as Jessica shares memories of her past as a pole vaulter and how she had to give up her dream after injuring her leg. Dan wants to share his own story, but holds back when he notices a suspicious man nearby carrying a briefcase. Approaching the man on campus, Dan discovers he is a German corn seed salesman looking for his daughter. As they pass by the laboratory, Dan begins to doubt the man's story and tests him in German to confirm what he is. "What did you just say? Where's the discotheque?" Jessica is surprised to hear her husband speaking German and walks away down the corridor. When the man opens a briefcase full of corn seeds, Dan believes him. Suddenly, one of McCaffrey's henchmen tries to shoot Dan, and a fight breaks out. Dan subdues McCaffrey's man. Meanwhile, Na stays at the school dormitory and accidentally walks into Trevor's room, only to find him with another girl. Shocked and heartbroken, she returns in tears. Dan tries to comfort her with his own stories, but realizes she doesn't need another lecture from her dad. Instead, he teaches her a martial arts move that causes intense pain without lasting harm. Deciding to give Trevor a lesson by breaking up with him, Na uses the move on Trevor, snaps a photo of his pained grimace, and feels much better. She returns to the van, more appreciative of her father than ever. The family heads to Las Vegas together. When they reach Colorado, Na takes over the driver's seat from her dad. She apologizes to Dan for forgetting to take her school magazine and promises to resume her role as the magazine's editor. She thanks him for not telling Jessica about it. "I'm your biggest fan, Dad. Always have been, and I always will be." The next day, after spending a night in Colorado, Dan contacts Augie and arranges to meet in Las Vegas to retrieve the family's passports. Sitting in a restaurant, Dan intends to tell Jessica about his past, but Kyle interrupts him by explaining why he enjoys being an online gamer. Kyle explains that he lacks confidence in real life but has fun playing killboy games, where many people admire him. "When I'm Kyle, I'm too shy to talk to girls. I'm a nobody. When I'm killboy, I'm good, Dad." He also tries to prove to his father that gaming requires intelligence and quick reflexes. Kyle then challenges Dan to a laser tag game, stipulating that if he wins, Dan can't stop him from gaming. If he loses, he'd quit. Hearing this, Dan agrees, and they head to the laser tag arena, unaware of Dan's proficiency with weapons. Kyle loses the game easily, feeling down. Kyle is cheered up when Dan tries to lift his spirits with a hug. After arriving in Las Vegas, Dan and his family go to their hotel room. Later, Dan meets Augie at the bar, and together they go to pick up the new passports and plane tickets to Vancouver. Afterward, Dan returns to the room to prepare for dinner with Jessica, making sure to bring some weapons just in case. Before leaving, he tells the kids not to leave the room. "Do not open that door for anyone, you got it? Screw that, right?" However, Nina and Max sneak out to explore the hotel's online gaming area. Meanwhile, one of McCaffrey's men spots Dan and his family in Las Vegas and reports back to his boss. Back at the gaming area, Kyle meets a professional player named Ren, who invites him to the restaurant to meet other gamers. Dan tries to tell Jessica about his past, but when the waiter speaks to them in French, he inadvertently responds in French. Jessica is surprised to discover her husband knows 2 foreign languages, something she hadn't known before. Lacking the courage to reveal the truth about his past life, Dan begins explaining in French. Even though she doesn't understand what Dan is saying, Jessica finds his speech incredibly charming. Meanwhile, Kyle is gearing up to play an online game. Ren asks him to take his place so he can chat with Na, unaware that McCaffrey's men are watching from a distance. After dinner, Jessica and Dan return to the hotel, temporarily fooled by mannequins that look like their kids sleeping. To set the mood, Jessica uses music and a love mist to create a romantic atmosphere. Thanks to the mist, Dan notices a laser sight and dodges a bullet. He throws a wine bottle and fires his gun, igniting the attackers. But when McCaffrey's subordinate Coogan takes Jessica hostage, Dan quickly drops his weapon. Seizing an opportunity, Dan throws a knife that strikes Coogan in the eye, rescuing Jessica. Dan then rushes to the kids' room, only to find Nina and the others gone. Searching for them at an online gaming venue, Jessica scolds Dan for keeping secrets and says she doesn't want to see him again. Meanwhile, Kyle wins the online gaming competition and becomes MVP. Soon after, Jessica and Dan arrive at the gaming area to pick up Kyle and the others. Once they reach a safe place, Dan reveals his past as a secret assassin who had escaped his group to live as an ordinary man. Since then, McCaffrey and his men have been hunting him down. Kyle and Nina, upon hearing this, obviously don't believe him until gunshots ring out. Dan hurriedly tells the family to hide in the casino. He tries to take down McCaffrey's men, but his bullets can't harm them because they wear bulletproof vests. Dan continues to distract them and eventually defeats them. Afterward, he confesses to his family that his real name is Sam. He had served in the military, and McCaffrey recruited him for special missions to eliminate criminals beyond the law. However, Sam soon realized McCaffrey was using him to kill and collect hefty fees, so he decided to run away. McCaffrey then began hunting him, threatening his family's safety. Sam provided them with new identity passports. However, Kyle and Na are upset, thinking Sam has ruined their lives. After 18 years of marriage, Jessica feels angry and betrayed, so she contacts Gwen, planning to leave Las Vegas for a vacation. When Jessica and her kids meet Gwen, they are surprised to find she has arranged a private plane for them. On the plane, Gwen tells Jessica about her ex in Buffalo, who had left her to marry another woman. The worst part is, she's insufferable. Jessica realizes Gwen is talking about Dan. When they arrive at their destination, Jessica intends to leave with the kids. Suddenly, McCaffrey confronts them. Gwen has set a trap, handing over Sam's family to McCaffrey in exchange for Dan's return. "I just want Sam. He's my payment for delivery." McCaffrey then takes Jessica and the children hostage, forcing Dan to meet him alone at the casino. Shortly after, McCaffrey contacts Dan and threatens to harm his family if he doesn't comply. When Dan arrives at the casino, McCaffrey's men monitor his entry with drones. Dan meets a man named Sprouse, who leads him to the room where McCaffrey is holding his family. Upon entering, McCaffrey welcomes Dan. "No hug for your old man." "I start now, Dad." During their conversation, the family learns that McCaffrey is Dan's father. McCaffrey wants Dan dead because he had abandoned him, but over the past few days, Dan had eliminated every man McCaffrey sent after him, making him proud of his son. Now McCaffrey wants him back. If Dan returns to work for him, he will release his family, but under one condition: he can never see them again. "You come back where you belong, just send the kids safely back to Buffalo." Dan agrees, and Sprouse escorts Jessica and the others out of the room. In the elevator, Jessica cleverly uses Max's diaper to distract Sprouse and pushes him off the top floor. They hurry back to rescue Dan. In the room, Dan pretends to be in love with Gwen, eventually knocking her unconscious to allow his family to escape. Dan apologizes to Jessica for keeping secrets and promises to always tell her the truth. Meanwhile, McCaffrey senses something is amiss and orders his men to be ready. Dan instructs Jessica and the kids to go to the rooftop and give the drone to Kyle, who will help monitor McCaffrey's henchmen. "I need to be that guy one last time for us." However, when McCaffrey's men wait by the elevator to capture Dan and his family, they find only Max's gear inside. As they inspect it, a bomb explodes, catching them off guard. With Kyle's assistance, Dan takes down McCaffrey's men one by one. Meanwhile, Gwen wakes up and McCaffrey calls her, ordering her to find Kyle, who is operating the drone upstairs. Dan aims his gun at McCaffrey, urging his father to stop everything, but McCaffrey orders his men to open fire on Dan. Dan dodges their bullets on the rooftop. Jessica notices the elevator ascending, and she hides the children and fires as the elevator doors open, but Gwen calmly steps aside. Gwen taunts Jessica, knowing she has the upper hand in combat and doesn't take her seriously. In this prolonged struggle, Gwen gains the advantage, burying Jessica under a pile of debris. Elsewhere, McCaffrey overpowers Dan and has the chance to shoot him, but can't help ranting about how family has made him weak. Meanwhile, Gwen corners the kids. This gives Jessica the strength to lift the rubble, but she is still tossed around like a sack of potatoes. Seizing the moment, Dan manages to remove the bullets from McCaffrey's gun, leading them to engage in close combat. Jessica grabs a bamboo pole, attempting a pole vault, but fails. "Oh, come on." When she tries again, Gwen finds it amusing, but this time, Jessica hurls the pole like a javelin. Without further ado, McCaffrey defeats Dan in the fight and grabs a gun to kill him. Just then, the family arrives. Nina tells McCaffrey she is glad to find her grandfather and suggests they could become a normal family. "When I look at you, I don't just see a cold-blooded killer. I see my grandpa." McCaffrey is momentarily distracted, giving Dan the opportunity to strike. Nah does this to buy Dan more time. Finally, the family reunites as the police arrive, and McCaffrey is imprisoned for his numerous crimes. 6 months later, Nina fulfills her dream of becoming a news reporter by covering McCaffrey's assassin organization. Dan opens a security consulting firm for banks and hires Augie. Jessica becomes a sports coach at a school. In their free time, the family goes on road trips together with one rule: no one can use their phones during the journey. They cherish every moment of their family outings. Never forget to bring diapers; they might just save your life and help you defeat the bad guys. Thank you for watching.